Paul Fleming says, since Trump, the Republicans seems to go big on embarrassing themselves. As a person of color that was in the corporate world, I knew that I was going to be scrutinized to no end, but keep my cool to show the fools that I'm more than they could comprehend. Brother, why did you have to say that? My new book is going to have all the tribulations that I've had, not only here in the United States, but even in China. As I flew to China, I'm going to tell you a quick story that I'm putting in the book. Because that, and sorry guys for digressing, but when Brother Fleming has this to say, he brings back a lot of memories, right? You guys know I'm a software engineer, mechanical engineer, all that kind of stuff. I work for corporate America. I work for the big oil companies, the big oil service companies for a very short time before I did my own. But there was this particular product that I helped design in called TDS, not, that TDS11 was the other one. PDP, the PD, I forgot the name of it now. Anyway, it was for a company called, what was the company that I worked for? Anyway, it was one of the shell companies, I believe. And so they got purchased by a company in China. It turns out that company in China was looking for a company in the United States to build an oil well, Dresser Atlas, that was the company, to build an oil well logging machine, that computer system, right? You drop a tool in a well and you pull in the tool, and that tool is going to send out radiation to the different parts of the well to say where there's hydrocarbons, all that good stuff. And I wrote what's called the idle loop of that particular thing, which was that thing that exchanged, go to job 1, go to job 2, pick the data up here, blow the hole there, that sort of thing, right? And we formed a company, well, before we even formed the company. And I got to tell you guys this, because people would look at what Paul Fleming had to say and think, there we go again, playing the card, but it's not so. The first thing that happened is I worked for, beforehand, worked for a company called NL Industries. And this friend of mine who worked there, God rest his soul now, he needed a software guy to do the software, and this guy wanted for us to go ahead and work under his domain. So we decided, okay, I'll work with him. I was at NASA then, and I said, I'll work with him. And we'll go ahead and work for this guy because it was a startup, all that good stuff. And the guy comes and he said, oh, I tell you what, about salaries, and this is back in the late 80s. And he said, I will give Jerry, that's the white guy, $60,000. Egberto, you got $40,000. This was back in like early 80s, I mean middle 80s, right? Actually 89, I think it was, 88, 89. And it was funny because at NASA, number one, I was making more than that then, and not only that, I was making more than Jerry at NASA, right? Jerry was about 20 years older than me. And it was funny because exactly as Paul just said, the preconceived notions that one has and the way you're judged and so forth, it can be demoralizing. This stuff, it really hurts. And if you listen to what Paul Fleming says, having to do things differently, it does, whether people want to accept it. A lot of times we just play strong and all of that. We don't care about it and we just go on with life. But it actually does hurt that you have to constantly be on your game. Here's what I said in the tweet. I said, I am very happy for my mother, my father, my Panamanian village that I grew up in, and the local village that I've created. Because absent all those realities, what I went through in life, in corporate America, and in my own business, would have been very, very hard to get through, especially in the profession that I'm in. And for those of you who are software engineers in corporate America, going out on your own, you'll understand what I'm saying. But anyway, that was a start. He said, Egberto, I'll give Jerry 60, you'll get 40. But that wasn't the only thing. Okay, so we went ahead and said, hell no, that's not how it's going to work. So Jerry, myself, and a guy from Taiwan formed a company called PWL. It stood for Pace Willis Low. White guy, black guy, Asian guy. So now it's time to go to China. So we have to go to China for 2 weeks to talk to all the engineers to develop this particular product, right? And we're off to China. And we go to China, and when we get onto the big tables with all the engineers or whatever, I am completely disregarded. You know, the image that America has placed on people who look like me, complete disregarding. Even the Taiwanese guy, he was in China, of course, but the Taiwanese partner, he was a physicist. I was the designing the software, and Jerry was designing the hardware. And it was funny because even the Chinese guy, the Taiwanese guy, he got tacit support. But Jerry was treated like a king, completely like a king, right? Again, it's how the world sees the world. And we were there now talking, and I didn't know that this company bought Dresser Atlas's, can't remember the name of the thing, PDS-11, something like that. I didn't know that they bought it. So when they bought it, I'm like, really? I worked for that company. And they're like, oh, really? Cool. All right, nice. You know, that's how they did. And I said, yeah. And you know, they brought a whole bunch of code. The code is this big because what we had to do with this new system that we had, it was a very new modern system. And they wanted us to know that they wanted to do better than what the Dresser Atlas system did. And I said, oh, I worked on that. And they're like, you know, that looked at you like, oh, yeah, sure you did. Right. So I said, I actually wrote the idle loop. The idle loop was that part of the software. It's a huge piece of software that goes ahead and take data from everything, put it together, all that kind of stuff, right? And one of the engineers ran into the room. From then, I was the king. I was Mr. Willies. And everything they had to ask about software. That's how I learned about Askima. Askima is software in Mandarin, right? So that you'd have all the engineers asking. All I heard was Askima. Askima, the translator would come and started talking to me. And they exclusively left Jerry, and I was the team guy from this new company at that point. Because they saw major corporation, and they had in-house the author of a piece of the software that they spent millions to buy from a United States corporation. And when what Fleming just said makes sense. You have to, Jerry went there and it was assumed that Jerry was the person who did all this engineering and all that sort of stuff, right? I was the one placed on the back burner. But I was the one designing the system, the entire software system, which is what, you know, most of the hardware was off the shelf. The bond tools that go into the well came from other places. And it took having to prove yourself over and over and over again. Miss Jackson is more qualified than just about every single person on the Supreme Court, given her education, given that she has been on both sides of the law. As a defender, she has experience. As a prosecutor, she has experience with dealing with prosecutors. And as a judge, district judge, and regional judge, she has experience. Something none of them have all in the aggregate. But they want to know her LSAT scores. They want to know all these things about her, whether she is qualified. I mean, Amy Barrett wasn't asked that. So the reason I wanted to spend some extended time on this is because it is common for when somebody of color just say, well, you know, that only happened because. It is always easy to say, there you go again. Yeah, we know there's discrimination, but everything isn't discrimination, and sometimes it's just politics or whatever. And that's true. You have to be very careful when you call out discrimination, otherwise it loses its punch, its value, when it really needs to be called out. But God, the thing about it, it has to be called out so often, especially where professionals come into the fold. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.